G'day fellow hustlers, Shadow here. Let me start by saying if you've got any questions relating to this video, drop it in the comment section. There's a good chance that you might want me to more explain certain things that I'm saying in this video. This isn't for your newbies, this isn't for someone who's fresh to the game or just starting out. This is more for a seasoned player that already knows what they're doing in the game, but might want to make that next step to understanding how damage works and is calculated on your weapons, and how your rings and amulets, the damage and that sort of thing is added to the weapon. So yeah, let's get straight into it. We'll start off with the different types of weapons that you've got. We'll do tank weapons first. So we'll just go into my storage where most of my stuff is. I've got a crap load of legendary stuff to break down that I don't use. So we'll start with the fastest weapon. Where is it? We'll start with some daggers. So if you click on where it says damage per second, it'll tell you the attack speed of your weapon. So daggers are fast. They don't tell you what fast means, but basically fast means it'll strike 2 times every second. So your daggers will hit twice every second. If they're doing 4,866, you're going to halve that each strike. It's going to do 2,433. Next we'll go on to a sword. Click on the damage per second again, and that's normal. So normal is 1 strike every second. So it's going to do 6,358 every time it strikes. Next one up will be your mace. If you click on that again, that's slow. Slow is 2 strikes every 3 seconds. And then the last one, I don't have any in storage, I don't think. Oh, here, we'll look at an epic. Doesn't really matter. Oops. If it's an epic or a legendary or a rare, which this is. Click on it again. So they're very slow. Very slow is 1 strike every 2 seconds. It's the slowest weapon in the game, but obviously does the most damage. I'll show you my main weapon that I use. So you can see it does 6,386 per second, but only strikes once every 2 seconds. So you can see every time it hits, it's going to do 12,300 or 13,100. It's got a range. They're not exactly precise. But yeah, so that's very slow. So yeah, it doesn't do as many strikes. Now, if you have a look at your ring, the damage this one does, so it does an additional 1,300 to 1,700 damage. That's calculated per strike, not per second. So whereas it shows you here damage per second, your rings and anything like your armor here, which also does extra damage, this is added per strike, not per second. So what that means, if you're putting it on your daggers, here are my good daggers, so that does 8,900 per second, and what, 4 to 4.7 per strike. Your ring is added per strike, so per second you're adding double that. So if your ring's doing an additional 2,000 damage per strike, it's going to be doing 4,000 damage per second. Whereas if I was to attach it to my axe here, that 2,000, it only strikes once every 2 seconds. So it's only going to add 1,000 damage every second. So that turns this axe from 6,386 to 7,386 with a 2 second ring, as opposed to the daggers. If I've got a 2 second ring on my daggers, it's going to turn that 8,918 into 12,918 per strike. So that's the basics of how they add this sort of external damage to your weapons. So if you want to work out how much damage you're going to be doing, Yeah, it's good to know these things. It's good to know how much damage per second it does, or how many strikes per second that your weapon does. So if we go into Mage Weapons, right, so we'll switch it to Mage. So you see, wands are the slowest. Anything that says wand, this is as in Particle of Hell wand, or here the Power of Darkness wand, they're the slow ones. See, so they're very slow, like your axe, so they'll do one strike every 2 seconds. So same sort of thing with your mage rings. If it's adding an extra 400 to 600 damage on a particle wand that's per strike, it's going to add half of that per second. So this 2615 is only going to go up by 200 each strike. As opposed to, we'll go down and see if we can find some other weapons here. Oops, I turned off mage, sorry about that. So scepters are the fast ones. Well, they're normal speed. There's no fast speed in mage. There's only normal, slow, and very slow. So, as with the tank weapons, on a normal speed, your ring that's doing 400 is going to add 400 pretty much to that 2487, which is going to level those two out. So 2615, it's going to add a half per second. It's going to go up to 28. And your 2447, which adds the entire amount per shot, is going to go up to 2800 and level those two out. The bonus though, and most people prefer the scepter, they hit twice as fast, so you know you're dealing the damage faster than you are with a wand. And the other types are the orbs. So anything that says orb, that's the slow. So that's 2 strikes every second. Every 3 seconds, sorry. 2 strikes every 3 seconds. So you've got to work that out. Do a bit of math and work out how much damage your rings and your armor is going to add to that weapon. Right, so we'll go on to the last type of weapon. And these are your archer weapons. Now with these, there's only really 2 types of archer weapons. So you got your slow type, which is your expos. These things, like I said, with a slow weapon, they do 2 strikes every 3 seconds. And the other one is your normal bow. And they're a normal speed, so they'll do 1 strike every second. So you can do the math on that as well. You just need to know the expos deal 2 strikes every 3 seconds, and your normal bow and arrow will do 1 shot. We'll go 1 for 1. So you could probably figure this out for yourself. Bear, yeah, this is going to do more damage. When you start adding up all your rings and everything, and you start gemming them up, so like you can see an epic gem does 107 plus 179. These things start to add up quite a lot when you equip them to a normal bow. So to start off with, before you start gemming things up, your expo will do more damage than your normal bow. But once they're gemmed up and quite powerful, your bow is going to do a lot more damage than the expo. So that's something to keep in mind. Right. So that's the basics of how your damage is calculated. It's not as simple as this one's got the most power, this one's going to do most damage. That's just not going to happen. Like I said, once you start adding in external factors with your armor and your rings and such that add extra damage, you're going to see a vast improvement in the faster weapons. So the faster weapons will start off doing less, but once they're gemmed up, they will do significantly more damage than the slower weapons. Having said that, I still use this. These things are really OP. 45% chance of dealing splash damage equal to 174% of the fighter's area damage. And with the ruin, 25% deal triple damage. That's really good. That's it's devastating, especially if your opponent's running too many tanks up the front. If you've got an opponent running 2 or 3 tanks, you're laughing. This guy will just destroy them. If you're up against a single person, like with my guy, I only run one tank, two mages, and three archers. If you're up against me, you're probably better off with the daggers. Um, yeah, because an axe isn't really going to do much. There's no one to splash when he's on his own. Uh, whereas the daggers, I'll tell you what. I'll equip the daggers and show you. I should have taken the ruin off that first, and I'll show you what the ruin does when it's attached to the daggers. So you got a 13 to 14% chance, which isn't that high. It's not a good chance, but you got to remember you're striking twice per second. So you got 4 times more of a chance of this ruin activating than you do with the axe. So that's 13 to 14% chance of dealing 120 to 125% of the weapon's damage. You might say, oh, look, 120, 125% is, well, that's heaps lower than my axe, which does 174. But once again, it's striking 4 times as often as that axe's. So 4 times 120, 125%, that 20 to 25%, you times that by 4, it's doing 180 to 200% more damage when you compare it to the axe. Also, yeah, there's the other benefit of the target affected takes 15% more damage. That's not just from you, that's from anyone who's taken it. So for that 5 seconds, the target affected takes 15% more damage on anyone who's attacking him, including your archers. So it's not too bad. For me, I still like my axe. Like I said, I've had a lot of success with my axe. I'm very attached to it. They are great. So we'll whack the ruin back on there. Yep. So that's the basics of how damage is calculated. Damage per second is not the only thing you need to look at. You need to look at how often your weapon strikes. And what gear you're adding to that weapon. It's vastly affected by what sort of gear you've got beside your weapon. The more additional damage that your rings and armor. I say rings and armor because your amulets don't really add damage. They're all defensive. You'll see if I show you through all my amulets. There's none that actually do damage. They're all shields and health, including this one. Yeah. So your only things that are going to add extra damage, mainly your rings and certain armor. Gives you additional damage also. Right. So I hope that helps you. That it's not the easiest to calculate. Once you know what you're doing, you can figure it out pretty quickly. It requires a little bit of math, but you'll get there in the end. It's worth looking at. You can decide then what sort of weapons you want to use. As I said, when you're first starting out and you're not gemmed up, it might be preferable to use the crossbows, as they're a bit more powerful than a normal bow. But once you gem up your normal bow, it's going to overtake it. And then you want to consider the special abilities that your bows do also. As you can see, this one has got a 30% chance of stunning the enemy for 2 seconds. Stun's good. When you stun someone for 2 seconds, they're not doing damage. So it's saving you a lot of health points. So this one increases the shot damage by 10% as its special ability. It's good to use if you're not running stun. My squad doesn't run stun at all. I've got a few artifacts that will do stun, like this one here. The lightning stuns when dealing damage. So that'll affect them. This one doesn't. A lot of people think it is a stun artifact, but it's not. Freeze is not stun. You'll notice when the freeze goes off, you guys don't get that dazed look about them, which happens when they get stunned. So your freeze will not affect the special ability of this bow that increases the damage by 10% each shot. So that's good to know. This will, though, as you can see, it actually says, it states that it stuns. The lightning jumps nearby enemy 6 times, stuns when dealing damage. So they get stunned. It's for a very brief time. It's like 0.6 of a second. So it's not an effective stun, but what it does do is it affects your weapons that increase damage. Let's see, same with my axe. My axe increases the damage done by 24%. I don't worry about that though, as your lightning goes off pretty much at the start. Within the first couple of seconds, your lightning gets activated. So I don't really worry about that. And my other things don't really don't stun. Snail, it's got a 33% chance of it's got a 25% chance of stunning. You can see the bottom one there, stunning snail. That's the purple snail. If that comes off, that'll interfere with my weapons that increase their damage. But like I said, that's only a 25% chance that it'll come off a stun. Seems to be the healing snail seems to come out more often. So I say 25%, but I've never actually looked at it and calculated it and done a trial to see what comes up more often. But just from my experience, the healing snail seems to come out more often than the stun snail. So it's possible that the healing snail is set higher to come out than the others. I don't know. That's something I can look into if you want to know that sort of thing. Like I said, at the end of this video, you can drop a comment if there's anything you want me to go over, anything you're not sure about. Yeah, I can run you through it and let you know. Right, so that's basically it. That's how your damage is calculated per weapons. You've got your fast and your tanks. Your fast, your normal, your slow, and your very slow. Your mage weapons, you've got your normal, your slow, and your very slow. And your archers, you've got your normal and your slow. Okay, well I hope this has helped you with how you set your squads up. Yeah, you might want to take into account how much damage each weapon does in deciding how you want to set your squad up. All right, I'll catch you on the next vid, guys. Have a good day.